Just like that, we're jumping into another series for week 11 of the Quake Pro League. Welcome back. It's going to be psygib versus cha1n going head-to-head. A matchup that has happened so many times in Pro League, and this is another one of those times. Would you believe it? But I think that there are two players here that they're not the kind of players that you look at and you think like they're in massive danger of being in that kind of tricky position, because they can get wins. And it's weird saying that about cha1n now, because he was the hottest up-and-comer mere stages ago. But this seems like more of our kind of standard match today.
Yeah, mid-table now, or cha1n's mid-table. I think psygib has actually been struggling a little bit, probably underperforming relative to what one would expect from psygib. But you're right, I think from cha1n's perspective, maybe the meta's shifted a little bit from his era. That pulls changed, the play style's changed, it's more aggressive and higher tempo, and he's been struggling to adjust. Whereas psygib, you would feel that should benefit him, but it's just not. And he's last couple of stages, honestly, just not been looking the same self as he had been, and that's partly maybe his fault, but also partly the way the scene has shifted. He just hasn't developed in the same light with it.
Now, big on community still. psygib did host a 2v2 yesterday. I'm sure plenty of you watched it. GG's. That did go to Waz and Effortless, if I'm not mistaken. Memory like a sieve, which is a great trait for a commentator. But on that note, let's take a look at the picks and bans, and I can look at them and forget them. Here we go now. Awoken, which we haven't seen much today, to be fair. Our first map between Doomslayer and Nyx. Respect ban on the Athena, methinks. Deep Embrace up next. Respect ban on the Scale Bearer, methinks. And then Veil of Nath, Death Knight versus the Strog.
Agree with your points completely. Another Nyx coming out 2 in 1 day. We are blessed to catch up. Although psygib is someone you would expect to bring it out as well. But we've seen the level that Nyx can be played at today by one player. Let's see how psygib can play it in this one. Going up against Doom, you know what you're going to expect out of Doom. Very stable play style. So it's how do you play around that? Deep Embrace, a bit unusual actually, honestly, to see the visor brought out there. Obviously he has some decent utility no matter what map you play him on, but just the lack of mobility can definitely come back to haunt him, particularly when there's a Strog available. So let's see how psygib plays out. Again, Ranger, one of the best picks on that map, what to expect from cha1n. And then Veil, which used to be cha1n's starting pick, so he's mixed it up a little bit since then. He picks the Death Knight. That's quite an unusual pick in my mind from cha1n. It requires him to actually engage in combat, which is not something he generally wants to do. And then Strog, again, slightly more unusual for Veil, not the best for a crouch sliding champion, but you can make it work.
And again, you have a champion built on movement and taking those tight corners against a Death Knight too. So yeah, there's many different areas to the later end of this pick and ban. And just to kind of rewind a little bit into the Deep Embrace visor, when already mobility was taken quite considerably on Awoken, like the Doom was taken, Nyx is gone, Athena is gone, and then immediately it's Deep Embrace. It kind of seemed like psygib would have wanted to pick that. So I'm so curious to see what his strategy will be. We're keeping a keen eye on that one. But there's no time like the present, and our present is Awoken, because that's going to be our first. And two champions, there was a time where you would see these two almost every time. They were so common because there's so many tight walls that her wall jump with Nyx may as well be called a double jump on this map, because that's exactly the same way it gets used. So a similar meta, you would assume.
Yeah, used in a very similar way, 100%. Obviously, you have to be more careful in close combat, but if you can get full control with the Nyx, she's so scary, because you just have the utility of the Ghost Walk to double back up, and just her wall jump ability in general is just more useful than Doom's. So she can be an absolute menace, particularly if she begins connecting with her rail. Obviously, you become fragile, out of control, and have to slow the pace down and be more tactful, just like we saw from cha1n. But the utility that she brings to the table is always incredibly scary.
Now, we should be loading in due time, don't you worry. We want to see this match just as much as you do, but let's use this opportunity as we wait to talk about predictions. Now, again, I haven't quite got my second monitor on the chat yet, but who do we think has the upper hand here? Because I kind of feel like this could be a 2-1 to psygib.
I agree. Like I said, psygib hasn't been playing the best, but that's also because everyone else has been playing decent. And in fairness, he's played, I think, virtually all the best players at this point and had some respectable standings within that. I mean, they have the same results, 2 and 5. So this if it goes psygib's way, it can completely flip the American leaderboards and leave cha1n down in those relegation area, which you don't expect it to be there at the end of the stage, but it's never nice to be at. I'm going to say 2-1 psygib as well.
I'm looking at the maps, and I just think that Awoken, if psygib, I mean, is able to play that eternal game, no pun intended, because Doom's there, of just being slippery as anything, having similar movement to Doomslayer. But we know that psygib, phenomenally good at just being able to fight, being able to brawl. Going up against a Doomslayer, if he has a hot LG and a nice opening rail, could be a nice map for him. Deep Embrace, this could be, above all of the maps, the Deep Embrace could be, I think, potentially the biggest chance for cha1n, because cha1n has the already established meta pick of Ranger. We've seen how devastating Ranger could be anyway on this map. And then Visor is a bit more of a wild card on this map, because it's just like you kind of went into. It's the lack of mobility, with mobility being key on Deep Embrace for the most part. But then his utility coming from Vision on a map where you already get a lot of information anyway. So I want to know how he's going to use that piercing sight. Is it going to be, there's an interesting idea here that just might not work because the Ranger is all over the place, or is it going to go the other way? And could cha1n kind of get caught off guard, perhaps?
Yeah, the only thing I do say is that I do massively prefer cha1n's picks. I think the Doom's more stable. The range is just straight up better on Deep Embrace. And the DK is easier to execute on Veil. It is tough, but I'm gonna have to stick with my original 2-1 no matter what.
I think we're all in common agreement that a 3-0 would be surprising. And as we wait for this first map, I want to remind everyone that you can get involved in all competitive Quake action. Simply, you've got to do is follow the Quake social media. Everything related to Quake Champions, whether it's the game itself, future updates, PTS stuff, whatever the case may be, and of course the esports program of the Quake Pro League. Everything can be found on the Quake website and the Quake on Twitter. So make sure you're using the hashtag Quake Pro League. Let us know who your favorite players are. Let us know who you want to win in all of these different series. We'd love to hear from you as we wait to start our first map. I do believe there's a little bit of communication not quite coming through from one of our players right now. So obviously once we know what's going on, we'll be able to jump in. But as soon as both players are ready to start, we'll be able to start this series. So apologies for the wait, but rest assured, as soon as we're good to go, we will be jumping in. I promise.
psygib's lost his shades.
He has. Can't find him. I can't play without my special gaming shades.
God, I love the psygib looks he busts out. I mean, that alone is worth a map in my mind.
It just starts with a map advantage.
Yeah.
Depending on the flashiness of the shades, it depends on how many maps you start off with.
Best cosplay.
As we go into this, I mean, it's been a good day so far. And it is a nice demonstration of where we currently are in the later stage of... this is week 11, right? We've had so many matches and there's more to go.
Yeah.
A couple more weeks left and then we'll be preparing for that QuakeCon at home where everyone gets to come together. QuakeCon's always a great time because everyone's playing everything id related. You can find matches in every game, like Doom Eternal Battle Mode is popping, 2016's multiplayer is popping, every Quake has people in it, you know? It's one of my favorite times of the year. The only difficult thing is doing an entire day's worth of show and then getting a decent amount of games in at the end of the day, and then there's a little bit of sleep in there somewhere. Sacrifices must be made.
Man, QuakeCon's be so good. It's gonna be so good.
Oh yeah, it always is. And on that note, actually, we will be loading into map 1 because both players are now here and ready to go. I think it was a tech issue, I believe. I think one of our players had a bit of a tech issue and that's been resolved. Bit of a quick refresh and we're back in business. So we're loading into our first map now. Thank you all so much for your patience. Not too long of a wait, thankfully. Could always be longer in the wild world of the internet, but we're good to go. The warm-up will be finishing in a little bit. Awoken, Doomslayer and Nyx, psygib and cha1n. Let's go.
What's your prediction? I didn't hear your prediction.
I said 2-1 psygib is my gut feeling. Just with how things have been going, and looking at the picks and bans as well, I think that psygib, if this first map goes well, I definitely think he could take this. I just don't think it's going to be a sweep.
No, I wouldn't expect a sweep. But like I said, I'm going on psygib, gut feel as well. Although I do prefer cha1n's champions. Either way, like I said, I would on a normal day I would expect cha1n to win, but I'm not sure. Just in recent form, I think psygib just playing a bit cleaner.
Well, on that note, we're loading in. The warm-up comes to a close as Awoken is about to start off between cha1n and psygib. Similar champions in terms of how they navigate this map, but the little extra elements. Is it going to be enough for psygib to pull a fast one on cha1n here, or is cha1n just going to overwhelm?
He's on the Doom. He will have an easier start at this game. It's generally a little bit harder to establish yourself as a Nyx. And eating that rail will set her back a little bit more as well, but she has the Ghost Walk. If everything goes to pot, cha1n is just slowing it down already to try and get some information. He's caught psygib up here on the mid ground and forced out a Ghost Walk. Did connect on a rocket, but nothing too impactful.
The absolute opener to that fight came from picking up the light armor. psygib might not have expected cha1n to be so close, because the second he picked it up, cha1n goes in and scores a giant chunk of damage. However, Mega. Next objective, psygib nowhere near it. So this is likely to be a free pickup for cha1n. And it will be. Ooh, that LG certainly hurts. Gets himself a rail, and even more so.
No Ghost Walk up as well, so it should be another clean frag. He's not hitting any of his rockets at this point, but he knows how low psygib is. He's just trying to chase him down just in time for the next round of major items as well. And a good split between the two means he's got them on lockdown. psygib's going to try and contest, but it might not be the right choice. He's done a little bit of damage, but he's got nothing to follow it up with, so he's just sitting in a corner at this point. cha1n says, fine, I'll just go take your items then.
Another major push, one that gives cha1n such an advantage. Now psygib does at least manage to use that Ghost Walk to just create that free space. But again, it's not a situation. Oh my god. Just round the corner. Gets the rail. psygib has not had an amazing start here, but cha1n certainly has tons of damage. And again, he can afford to just back up and take this Mega. The split between the items means that we can keep the push going as long as it will last.
And that's exactly it. And then psygib needs to find a plan B because, as you said, cha1n is just pushing in and falling back on items because of the split. It's the pain train for cha1n at this point.
When we talk about a good start and this kind of matchup with Nyx, especially the way psygib approaches the champion, you need to have a good start. You need to be able to get a nice level of control over at least one of the items, have a strong rail game, you know, pepper out that damage, make it hard for the opponent to push in. And then that Ghost Walk just adds that extra layer, that extra spice. But that is not what's happened now. He's dead!
Okay.
-1. I don't even know what happened there. Maybe going for a kind of last-minute perforation? I don't really know. Either way, a disastrous turn of events, and we're not even 3 minutes in. 7 frags to split between the two.
Yeah, I'm not sure where psygib goes from here. He's barely touched a major item. He's not going to get this one at this rate. He's got no Ghost Walk, and he's sitting at -1.
And just fresh off the spawn every time cha1n gets that first bit of damage. psygib never able to get enough stack to do anything, as vague as that can sound. cha1n sees you, hits a rail. This is the opportunity. Can cha1n do it? You know he's going to try and peek, and cha1n shuts down the angle completely. I like that decision. You could, in theory, look for extra damage, but by showing yourself, you just give him an opportunity to get a frag. We don't want that. You want to keep psygib behind. That's exactly what cha1n is doing currently. Keeping his stack high enough that he can afford to take these rails. He can afford to take yet another one still. If he plays the defensive game correctly, psygib hits a rail, pushes in, he's still going to be taking a risk to chase.
What I've liked from cha1n in this game so far is he's relying a lot more on rocket and LG. Normally we see cha1n so heavily reliant on the rail that he can just lose control by missing a few in a row, right? But this time he's gone for the consistent damage choices and it's just been paying dividends.
cha1n going back to information early on the Mega. And this is a smart game to play. He's been hitting more shots than psygib across the board. If he's able to play this slippery, evasive game, kind of like now, psygib getting sent all over the place, misses the rail. But what cha1n does do is deal with all of the stack that psygib had. And now it's even, for the most part. Full armor currently for cha1n, and is in position for this heavy. Can he take it? psygib tries to push forward now. Hang on a minute. A rail. psygib again misses the shot. The rail has been his biggest enemy so far because he has taken so much damage thanks to missing those shots.
Since I'm not in the client, could you tell me how many major items psygib's had?
psygib has had 6, and cha1n has had 12. Hey!
Oh, there's a frag. There we go. We'll see psygib cam for the first time this map, but it cost him almost everything.
Oh. And he just jumps in and hits a rail like it's another day in the Quake office. psygib pushes through the teleporter. That is a risky play, but the super shotgun does a measly 12 damage. That's either misfortune for cha1n or just Nyx being too damn small.
I mean, it's something, but he's also dead again.
What is going on here? cha1n is just going around a corner and psygib is just standing still. That's not the first time that happened. On the 3rd frag, I believe, he hit a rail in the exact same scenario through the murder hole. And now, a favorable position for psygib. The high ground, right as there's no weapons coming out and a difficult LG fight. All of that damage was free. But none of the damage led to a frag. Nor has it stopped cha1n from pushing forward towards the heavy, of which he can take this, likely secure yet another frag. We can see here more of the rail. psygib consistently just not... psygib's nearby to cha1n. And it almost just seems like he can't hear him.
It's been a weird game from psygib. Not looked like he's playing Nyx at all.
I'm just wondering if, I'm not trying to create any kind of excuse by all means, but it just, is psygib having some audio troubles? Because there's certain instances where I'm surprised he's not looking that way. Either way, 11-2. I feel like this is going to be a GG anyway, but we're going to see if there's going to be any signs of life from psygib, because cha1n has just ran away with this so far. psygib gets a frag at a good time, so... as now the heavy goes into his possession, but what can he get from this? Is there a chance? That rail, a good start. An aggressive push from cha1n, though.
And cha1n's ship damage is stalling psygib. It's one in the mega as well. He's going aggressive here. He really has to with just 3 minutes to go. And it's going to work out, all fairness. It required a direct rocket. He's got to work his way around now to the heavy. cha1n at this point just needs to play defensive. He doesn't have to do any sort of overcommittals. He's got 7 frags to play with. And all the pressure and initiative is in psygib's corner now.
Oh, that tri-bolt has done a lot of damage. May as well be a railgun. With the purpose that it served. And cha1n will play the slow game now. Doesn't need to push, doesn't need to be too aggressive. Play the waiting game, that defensive game again. Anytime you can see the frag, let's just max out as much as we can. That was a wonderful push from psygib. Needs to keep this intensity going.
Well, this is what we needed to see 7 minutes ago. At least he's coming to the fore now. Good pressure, big rocket coming out, but cha1n gets away healthily. He's got the resources there, lovely rail, but he's taken so much damage from the tri-bolt in return. cha1n is just going to dance around. He doesn't even need to leave if he doesn't want to.
Boom! Surprise. And okay. Now, this is definitely a fine line. 5 frags in just over a minute and a half. And he gets it, and he gets the heavy. Part of me think it could be tight. cha1n got a bunch of frags in. cha1n got a bunch of frags in almost just as much time. I'm a glass half full man. psygib has to hit every single shot. There is not a single ounce of room for error, but he gets the item. cha1n, not railable. The defensive rocket jump. cha1n escapes for now, but he himself tender at 58 HP. Dies, but he takes the heavy. He denies the heavy.
That was huge. Yeah, that steal was huge.
Oh, cha1n. He's doing so much damage to psygib. Can psygib find him? He needs to find him now, and he needs to get as much frags in a short space. I mean, this is not the kind of comeback you're used to seeing, and cha1n's not going to make it easy.
He needs a clean frag. He's got Ghost Walk up. He has to use it, though, as he goes around that corner into a rocket. Bounces around. cha1n knows what's up. One's there. Can he convert? cha1n's just going to sit down below, and psygib...
Wait!
He still can't get it.
Oh, he gets it! 20 seconds! 20 seconds, but weak. And the delayed spawns come through for cha1n. Surely the delay has to be it. psygib has taken too much damage. He's taken too much damage, and if cha1n goes down, he will simply delay his spawn once again. And almost come back. If psygib did not concede so many frags at the beginning, who knows what could have happened in that one.
I mean, I didn't even expect that to be anywhere near close the way psygib was playing for the first few minutes, but he gave everyone in chat a show. That's all he ever wants to do, and my God, did he do it. It could have been on another day, as you said, 2 frags left. That would have been a comeback, but it was not to be in map 1.
But that was so close to being one of the most incredible comebacks that we've seen in Pro League, regardless of year or stage. Almost unfortunate that he couldn't pull it off, but cha1n did the right thing. Absolutely slowing things down to a snail's pace in those kind of closing 30 seconds. They reached a point where if I go down now, I can delay the spawn. I'm going to spawn with a decent stack. I'm going to have at least some kind of weapon. Really, the pieces were moving for him, and got to give cha1n his credit. The amount of dominance he put forward in the opening few minutes was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's kind of the best opening we've seen from cha1n. Pretty much this stage, how clean he was, the choice in strategy, as we said, normally heavily rail-based, and that's where he ended up at the end, but the opening engagements, all LG rockets, pressuring psygib. Some bad decision-making from psygib did enable that, and ultimately cost him the map, but cha1n made it work.
But the progression alone on that first map makes me interested for the rest of it. Because now, Deep Embrace, we get to see the rather, you could almost consider it experimental Visor pick. A champion that we just do not see all that often on Deep Embrace at all. But off the back of that first map and how close psygib was able to make it, that was looking like a total blowout. We were saying in kind of the 6-minute mark, this is a complete GG, because you're just not used to seeing people bring it back to the degree that psygib was so close to being able to do. But now Deep Embrace, right? A more traditional meta pick of Ranger from cha1n. psygib has the Visor. Medium versus medium, first of all. I think the difference in stack, and however psygib was getting caught at the start of the map, the fact that he's a light certainly didn't help matters.
Yeah, and it took him a while to get into the game. But as you said, once he did, he looked stable, looked as good as we've seen him. So should set him up nicely for map 2. Ranger, meta pick here, the utility, the orb, everything about Ranger lends itself to deep. I think Visor's still okay. The vision is obviously great no matter what map you play on. It opens up angles, it means you can get free damage if you use it effectively. But controlling the map is an absolute nightmare without any sort of maneuverability or movement-based skill. And that's where it can unhinge him. So he's going to have to play slower and control that mid-ground and use the vision effectively. Otherwise, cha1n will be able to pick him apart.
Like I said, both players have reconnected to the lobby. I think both players actually have done a restart, so that's why there's a little bit of a gap between these two maps. But I think they've both rejoined, so we should be able to jump straight back in. But when we normally talk about this matchup, don't we? Ranger versus Visor, we talk about how, because it's normally on a more kind of medium-sized map, maybe one that's a bit more rail. I'd say rail-heavy. I know the rail is important on Deep Embrace, but I'm sure you catch my drift. We talk about how Visor's information can be so game-changing that the extra burst of a champion like Ranger, who can reposition, get the orb damage on deck, be aggressive, extra rocket jump potential because of the less self-damage, all that stuff. Like, you talk about that as in, like, the utility of vision is super, super, super important. On Deep Embrace, I'm just more curious about it because on paper, like, when you think about it, it just doesn't seem as extreme. But, you know, that's why they're there and I'm here, right?
It's a different utility, you're right. Like on a map like, I don't know, Blood Run, where you don't always know where your opponent is, that comes in incredibly useful. On a map like Deep, it's more about hitting the rail shots when you're leaving the heavy, making sure you know exactly what the safest pathing out of your item is. If your opponent is below you, you can just get some chip damage from above. Every single piece of damage and unreturned damage is huge at this level. And so getting the kind of the initiative because of your vision advantage is where it comes into play. But as you say, it's less useful than you'd find on other maps, but it has its uses nonetheless.
Well, both players are in the game. We should be starting Deep Embrace momentarily because cha1n, as one-sided as map 1 was for the vast majority of it, it was a close map 1. Is it going to be as close on Deep Embrace? Is this where cha1n gets the series win? I was spending a lot of this map looking at things through psygib's point of view, I think, just because I want to see what he's doing. I want to see what tricks he has up his sleeve.
Apparently trapping himself by the rail is one of them, as he's just worked himself into a dangerous position trying to trap cha1n. He's managed to get out for now, but he's taken a lot of damage. He's also met cha1n in through the murder hole, where he's not where you want to be.
Now a good start for cha1n. cha1n puts himself near Mega, takes it happily. And at least for psygib, he gets a spawn side of Rocket and Rail. So if we have got this champion of Visor, you can already see that this extra information might be good, but I just think that cha1n, he knows it's used, right? So he's not going to give it up. psygib has to be really careful here because he just does not have a lot of weapons. The rocket and the rail is all he has. He has had the option, thankfully, to take this heavy, but if we're having that kind of mid-range brawl and cha1n's being aggressive, he's got the orb, I'm going to be a bit worried about psygib unless he gets, well, pretty much all of the Unholy Trinity. That LG could be pretty important, but he is about to get piercing sight again. The double up, though, is cha1n. Mega in hand and the orb to reposition. Control this middle ground, but he hasn't got armor. psygib tries to make chase, using the piercing sight to try and get extra damage as cha1n retreats, but he can't land anything, but he does take a rail! cha1n is ready for the rocket jump, and that was clean!
Nice. Oh, sorry, I just made myself chuckle because every time psygib sets a trap and tries to play patient, he stops chewing. Like he holds his breath. It's amusing. Anyway, but he has tied it up after some great rails from cha1n. Got himself onto the Mega as well. And as we said, he is controlling that mid ground very, very well. Just needs to be careful of cha1n's rail.
That rail almost ring out. It's psygib. Wow! That just happened.
Dunked!
That just happened. And so does that rail, apparently. Pushing forward for a second time. cha1n just kind of, oh no!
Not again, my friend!
That's happened 3 times. Railing someone before they rocket jump, and then they just get stuck in no man's land. 3 times in one day.
Oh, I mean, he just doesn't learn his lesson, apparently.
This is kind of looking like shades of map 1. But I almost fear that that room for a comeback to be made, like map 1, is not going to happen 2 times in a row. cha1n, so much stack. Can be aggressive. psygib pushing forward, needs to get some kind of frag on the board. Now he does take a little bit of rocket splash, but it's not enough yet, as the heavy is about to spawn. Enough time for psygib to collect. cha1n should be able to take the Mega though, but he knows there's going to have to be some defensive play. The defensive nails, great decision, because it means that psygib, this is a risk. Fighting for it, and cha1n knows it, and cha1n punishes it.
Yeah, and cha1n is just playing really well, capitalizing upon psygib's mistakes, which have been, unfortunately, plenty so far this game. Needs to clean that up if he's going to be able to get back into this game and form a comeback like we saw last time. Nice rails, got cha1n on the ropes here, but can he convert without taking any damage?
psygib uses this opportunity to keep cha1n weak and take this heavy. cha1n actually sticking around long enough to get 2 respectable rockets, and dare I say the frag! How does cha1n find that? Man was at death's door. psygib had so much stack, yet somehow it's 8-2.
Raining down pain, but he just cannot finish off cha1n. And psygib, once again, is relegated to the low ground, needs to get back up top, which he does, but cha1n is already waiting for him with the angle held. psygib hasn't got the stack to take this fight. Wants to do it, though. Manages to come out, hitting a couple of good rails. He's on the run, and cha1n trying to finish him off, doesn't get it, though, and has to give up the Mega, then return. Another nice rail from psygib, though. There's a slight vulnerability in cha1n's playstyle. If he doesn't connect with his rails, leaves himself wide open.
Doesn't teleport to the dire orb, but psygib knows he won't. Oh, he gets the perfect call out. And actually, is it just me or did cha1n? I actually wasn't looking at it from his point of view. I'm trying to see if cha1n delayed his spawn just to shut down that piercing sight from giving him extra info. Because I think that's why psygib was looking around with piercing sight activated. He was trying to see where he spawned.
The comeback's coming. cha1n's going to try and shut it down, rushing on through the rocket. He should be able to finish off psygib. He picks up the health, but it's all for nothing as cha1n does get that frag, and a clean one just before the heavy, and in perfect area to get his beloved rail back into his pocket.
There has been almost zero use of the LG from both players, by the way. This has been a rocket and rail rampage. I think equally they haven't even... Yeah, they've barely done over 700 damage of LG combined. Speaking of which, though, might be seeing it again. Just a little bit extra as cha1n gets yet another frag on the board. 10-5. psygib almost pulled off a near impossible comeback on Awoken. Couldn't quite do it. But the way things are going is going to get put in the exact same situation again, but it's going to be oh so harder as the spawn damage is almost there. Not quite. cha1n looking to trap it. Oh! Wow. Just that orb acting as a projectile right there. From a range that we're not used to seeing it connect by itself. A cheeky little 25. I think he's expecting the retreat. Oh, worthy idea, cha1n. Understanding he has enough time to take the hourglasses and maybe shut down those lights from being taken. But I think he'll be content to trade off these two items so far, because he knows that psygib's not going to have armor at the very least. This does mean that the preemptive rocket, cha1n lands one. psygib so tender. He's going to try and get as much damage as he can, but it's going to be difficult. A nice rail, though. Can psygib finish this?
Yeah, it's been nice by psygib to form a small comeback for this frag with a couple of good rails. I think cha1n will also be wary and reminiscent of last map of taking his foot too much off the pedal. He's caught psygib here for another clean frag. Both major items are up. cha1n will just choose the Mega since he's that side of the map.
We are reaching the dire position of someone that has a lot of work to do on a map where if you're too aggressive and you're too obvious with your approach, you will just get annihilated, but time is not on psygib's side. Has to do something. The piercing sight. I've been watching this map a lot through psygib's point of view, and unfortunately, often when he uses piercing sight, he's using it in a situation where cha1n is... He's not really at risk. He's kind of just biding his time. The piercing sight disappears, and then you're back to having to listen out again. We have not seen much of the visor do anything on this map, which is a shame.
No, I don't think so either. To be fair, though, we haven't seen a lot of use of the ranger's orb or passive, to be fair. It's just been cha1n playing better, and psygib making too many mistakes once again, being too aggressive in some situations. I mean, there was that mid-game point where he gave up 3 identical frags in a row trying to get a heavy. Just back-to-back rails from cha1n. Again, just put him in such a deficit where he has to take more risks to get back into the game.
And then once you've got a gigantic deficit to work with, one extra frag someone lands adds so much extra work when the chips are down and we have 1.5 minutes left to go. So this is not only going to be a GG for this map, it's going to be a series win for cha1n, minimal. 2-0. It could be 3-0, the way things are currently going, if psygib doesn't do something drastic in our final map. But cha1n is going to be satisfied with this victory. I know cha1n has always, across all of Pro League, been frustrated if he can't get a 3-0. You know, he's happy to get a win, but I think he'd much rather a sweep victory. And this has been one hell of a way to push himself forward to get more.
Yeah, and I think the visor pick is definitely part of the equation here. Something like a Keel would have been a safer bet. You can afford to make those mistakes. You can afford to play more aggressive when you've got the stack. But it was worth a shot in his eyes. Don't feel it added enough value though.
I'm always one to respect and appreciate stuff that you can consider an experimental pick. And I definitely would consider visor more experimental on Deep Embrace. You know, we're in a competitive setting. Sometimes the only way to put something into its true test or practice is to do it in tournament, you know, when there's something to play for, when it's the most serious. And it does have ups and downs. This is probably going to be one of the downs for visor today. But you know, there might be a time where another pick on a similar kind of situation has that element of surprise almost, something that most people haven't thought of. You know, the players of this level are always looking to just expand their horizons with how much they can study the game. Just didn't quite work, being a generous way of putting it, as we close out map 2 and a series victory for cha1n.
Well played by cha1n. Don't feel he was overly stretched in that map. Obviously, map 1, he had to fight the comeback off from psygib. Didn't see the same life from psygib in this map. The deficit was too strong and cha1n controlled it more effectively. So well played by cha1n to take the series. And it should put him in good light to take map 3 with the Death Knight pick.
Very much so, actually. I was looking through this highlight reel. There's, again, similar to map 1, right? So many frags happened in a tiny proximity of time that there reaches a point where you've got too much work to do. psygib had some impressive frags there, but all the while he was trailing behind by a significant margin, and cha1n just kept his performance at a maximum. And from that point, that's now 2 maps back to back where what has happened has been decided in the opening few minutes. psygib keeps it close in map 1, close a little bit about halfway through map 2, but there's just so much work to do. He's got a mountain to climb the second we've began.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any chill. psygib just doesn't stop. Like, those frags he gave up was just because he was holding W non-stop. And again, you pick Visor because you want to play a more strategical and slightly slower paced game that you could build around that vision. And as you said, a lot of the times he was popping vision didn't seem much of a purpose as to why he was using it. And so you cannot afford to waste the only benefit that it brings to the table, particularly on a map like Deep where you struggle anyway. So again, not the best pick, but also just not the strongest performance from psygib compared to map 1.
I'm worried about psygib now, though, because we're going into Vale of Nath as our final destination. The problem is he's fighting a Death Knight. He's Strog. Now, on most maps, we'd be talking about how Strog has this massive mobility advantage, will run rings around a Death Knight. You know, those key locations, the items or whatever there are, that's where Flame Strike becomes a thing. But if Strog gets a good start, he can be much better almost everywhere. That's not point blank, right? We're on Vale, where that's not as prominent. And considering there's already a 2-0 on the side of cha1n, cha1n has the more, I guess we'll call, reliable pick on a map like this, where you're going to be fighting on the items, you're going to fight people around corners, rockets are going to be flying, opening rails into whatever else comes next. This favors cha1n, as far as I'm concerned, and I am worried about psygib.
I mean, I am too. This map is decent for air control, but it's not good for a crouch sliding champion. And we also have to throw into question the context of this map as well, in terms of the life of psygib. He's sitting in 8th, but then he has a Dramis with very few points to his name, very few games played to his name, climbing the ladder. He could very quickly find himself down in 9th. And he's also got Epolis, who got up a map today and has been putting in decent performances. Very real possibility at this point psygib does go down into the regulation spots unless he picks up points.
Now, a good start for psygib, forcing out a ton of resources from cha1n, but at the same time, not enough to create anything significant just yet. The denial coming through, I like that from psygib, just needs the rail, right? So whatever we can do to create that position for ourselves. That is a lot of Hyper Blaster, fitting for Strog. Unfortunately, will go down. Right as heavy spawns, and cha1n in position again already.
And it's not the best start from psygib. cha1n now controlling the map. We know from experience this is one of cha1n's stronger maps. He's got a great foundation to build off, and he has the Death Knight, as you said rightly, the burst potential means whenever the Strog goes up onto the high ground, he has to be careful.
cha1n having control over the high ground so early has me worried for psygib. As a free pickup, some defensive shots, and cha1n trying to figure out what areas psygib might try and take, but so much LG to begin with. Oh no, he set him on fire. And those flames, they hurt. And those flames, what they did was create a guaranteed finish, because cha1n knows that psygib, he's going to want to put out the flames. Where's the one and only small health bubble? Right where I'm setting up my reticule. There goes another one.
Oh, man.
Uh-oh, Dan. Uh-oh.
I was about to say, psygib needs to learn from maps 1 and 2 to take his foot off the aggression pedal, and he's just not doing it. Yes, he's stolen away the Mega, but he's already given up 4 frags in trying to get to that point. So he really needs to learn from his mistakes and find a plan B in this chaos.
Now strong-arming himself off the spawner's work to at least get this frag, but he's got no armor. The light is as good as it's going to get, and yes, cha1n hasn't got any other weapons, but he's got the flames. However, psygib, the one element he's going to have in this matchup personally is that he has the health file. So similar to when Strong has to fight a Sorlag, you get that frag and you're on fire, at least the health file that the enemy drops will put you out. But it's a small little benefit.
But it feels like we've seen this story before. psygib down by a number of frags early into the game and then forming a comeback. The question is, does he form a comeback? It's going to be a lot more difficult in Vale when cha1n knows the angles like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
And it looks like to be connecting with all of these rails and just catching psygib in these choke points. Yes, the rockets weren't on point, but again, it should have been his frag in context.
Next item spawning, going to be that heavy. A little of the flames. Oh my good lord, that mid-air from cha1n. Bit of a sloppy. Oh! Was a bit of a sloppy encounter afterwards, but then he picks it up and psygib. Turn to Gibbs. That is gross.
It is gross, and cha1n just drops down a little bit early from the Mega, so psygib has a bit of a lifeline there. Can't finish him off, but now he can. Good rail. Doesn't actually realize it's been taken by the look of it. As he backs off to get that light, he's working his way over to the heavy now. It might work out in his favor if cha1n himself doesn't realize it's been picked up. But there comes the flame strike. Yes, psygib got the frag, but he also took so much damage.
The Mega's still up.
And it's still up.
cha1n's looking to get some kind of control off spawn. First, the two-piece combo. Oh. And now, finally, after almost one whole rotation gone, the Mega goes, and a bonus delay now put between the Mega and the Heavy, actually, so not bad for cha1n, who just might get both these items. Ooh, that rocket's good. psygib knocked off Kilter. Down with 10 seconds. Mega spawns once again. Every piece of this chaos that has happened, cha1n has just come out better on the other side. Ooh, bit of a fumbled rocket jump, though, from cha1n. That would have been a dead psygib, I'm pretty sure, so fortunate.
But even still, even though he didn't get it, he's also won himself full map control because psygib is just too weak and had to delay to wait to hear where cha1n is gone. So cha1n will pick up the Mega and the Heavy pretty much uncontested. The Flame Strike comes out to try and secure it, and psygib has to walk on by through it.
Kind of crazy to think that we've only had 5 minutes of this map. So much has happened. And only halfway through, which does mean that psygib has time to pull off one of these comebacks, but it's going to be a tall order currently as cha1n controls the map, consistently has more stack, is getting more damage. Just waits for psygib to reposition. The fight for Heavy begins, but not before cha1n's able to take that light. They trade armor for armor, but he springs the trap. Not a lot of damage though. The kamikaze definitely hurts as well.
Nice.
psygib gets a frag. This is the beginning. Can he get more from this?
It was a clean frag as well, Ketchup, which means, yes, he can push on through. cha1n's holding the angle, but he hasn't got the stack to wait around and contest the Mega. So psygib will be able to pick that up for free. Heavy not long after, 5 seconds to get across, which is plenty of time. And cha1n is now retreating. Now the challenge is for cha1n, can he withhold the pressure? We saw him retreat almost within himself on map 1. That can't afford to happen on this map.
You definitely run a risk of playing too passive on this map of all maps. If psygib has a giant stack and hits one rail, he's gonna be on the warpath for more. cha1n's gonna keep those items in his head. Should have a fair old idea now of when Mega's gonna spawn. An aggressive psygib unfortunately goes down one hell of a choke point and takes a bunch of damage. The rocket jump from cha1n to run in and steal. Now this is the beginning.
Yeah, big mistake from psygib to miss out on that rotation.
Dear.
He shouldn't have been doing it. He's also been caught now, scouting out with the drone. And all that work has gone down the drain as cha1n in position now for the rotation.
And although it didn't result in a frag, it forced psygib to retreat, and cha1n has full map control for yet another time. And we'll make that one more heavy just to add to the list. 3 minutes for 3 frags, but with the absolute advantage. cha1n has given himself make that 4, the way things are going. Needs to finish it. It's taken him a million years, but he gets it. 4 frags now. psygib has so much work to do. Oh, that peeker.
Yeah.
That one peeker. That's it. I feel like that's what's lost him the map.
Definitely. I mean, he needs to just play the items cleaner. He shouldn't be giving up full control like that. He's got a frag here. It's definitely not too late, but he has to now play perfectly and not make that mistake once again.
Just about 2 minutes for 3 frags. cha1n far while away from getting a flame strike. And the rail, psygib by all means should be able to land another. Can he do it? Hits a shot, but he's tender. What's spawning next? Mega up. Armor needed.
It's not the end of the world if he gets a frag. That isn't the cleanest on a map like Vale. There's plenty of resources around, but he has to be able to pressure spawns as well. 2 minutes is obviously a lot of time on Vale. cha1n, it does feel like he's being more conservative than he should be. Coming on through, he's got the flame strike though, but he's missed a crucial rail. Here we go, psygib's still in it.
Really good for him to climb back up after what happened a couple of minutes ago. cha1n taken by surprise by all means. Another frag.
Nice.
That one clean as a whistle. And even better as the heavy's just been taken also. This is 10-10, but now psygib major advantage. cha1n hasn't got a rocket. He's only got LG and rail. This is going to be a difficult fight to take, and it's a fight he can't win.
Lovely.
psygib takes the lead.
Clean once again. Plenty of time to set up for this mega. He's got cha1n pinned, but he doesn't want to commit because he knows the rockets are there and he could take a lot of damage, so he does retreat, wisely so. Picks up the light, picks up the mega. Perfect timing for the heavy as well. cha1n needs to make a move. He can't afford to get this going for free. He's going to drop on it. He hits the rocket. He hits the conversion with the flame strike. psygib forced to back off and gets out relatively healthy himself.
But he's on fire. That's just information. And cha1n knows exactly where psygib went to put those flames out. But he can't push forward into that rail hole. That's too obvious. Too much of a risk. We technically have a little bit of time to wait for this mega and then ponder our final move, but only 30 seconds on the clock for cha1n to do something. This is either going to be a 2-1 or a 3-0.
psygib won't even commit. He just wants to hit a rail over here. Misses it. cha1n knows where he's at. He's going to pick it up and just plus forward. psygib waiting and delaying, using his audio cues nicely. That's all he needs to do at this point. He's got the speed advantage. But has he got the brain to keep cha1n away? 5 seconds to go. He's been caught. He hits
Teleport.
a rail, and
That's
that
it.
will be that.
Absolutely. The second he got through that teleporter, it was a done deal. And psygib able to pull off the comeback in the closing few minutes. I'm happy that he was able to do that. Because it's like we got there in the end. 3 maps that started the same way, had a very similar middle point, and almost resulted in some kind of comeback. At last, on the 3rd map, he got it. And 1 map's better than none.
Just imagine if psygib didn't start with a 5 frag deficit. Let's just ponder that for a second. But no, you're right. It felt like it was a long uphill battle for psygib. It was littered with his own mistakes, and I think he'll definitely admit that. It comes with the territory, with the way he plays, but if he can clean it up, suddenly that goes from a 2-1 to cha1n to a 2-1, 3-0 to psygib. He could have quite easily have won every single one of those maps if he played a cleaner game. So he should take some solace in that, but also cha1n should also reflect on the fact that he kind of gave that away as well. So there's definitely some improvement on both sides.
Yeah, some unusual moments with these encounters that you're frankly not used to seeing. cha1n goes from being incredibly one-sided to out of nowhere he spawns and he can't even get a weapon. psygib's somehow all over him, and it almost feels like the exact same way he delivered that massive streak of frags to psygib. He was repaid in kind. But it's a good thing for the psygib fans out there, able to get a game on the board. It's been a good weekend for him in Quake, and it's good that he's able to keep things and soften the blow just a little bit. I'm sure he'd rather have a series win. Who wouldn't? But like I said, 2-1 is better than a 3-0, especially as we only have a few weeks of the weeklies left. And then just like that, QuakeCon at home, the World Finals will begin, and we'll see both these players there. So excited to see how that one pans out. But that does mean that cha1n gets a victory on psygib. cha1n, I think keeping that kind of middle ground point right now, it still definitely doesn't look like the cha1n that we saw when he was grinding harder than anyone, and he was like he was undisputed top 2 for a point, and I mean, by all means, he'd earned that too. He had earned that. It's just, I'd love to see that cha1n return.
It's also partly the meta, and he's going through a period of adjustment to adapt to the times, but also the whole North American scene have just come on leaps and bounds. You've got Maxter in there now causing chaos. We've got Zeneku, we saw earlier, playing better than ever. It's incredibly competitive over there now.
Well, we have already had a nice marathon of a day of Quake, but there are 2 series left to go. And if you've watched this show before, you know that it lies within the featured matchups. Our first, Base versus Cypher, in 5 minutes. We'll be here with it, joined by DJ Wheat. Grab a quick drink or something, but be back in 5, because it's going to be a doozy.